So imagine wandering into the basement archives of a museum, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And you discover that history's ultimate symbol of peace and forgiveness actually described himself as an arsonist.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a shift.
Right. I mean, imagine finding a diary where this incredibly iconic figure actively demands conflict. Like, he tells you to abandon your family and advocates for this completely ruthless, almost militant approach to spiritual awakening.
It definitely doesn't sound like the standard narrative, that's for sure.
Not at all. So today, we are opening a door that challenges basically everything you might think you know about one of the most famous figures in human history. We are embarking on a deep dive into a really controversial document.
Yeah, compiled in 2011 by a writer named Feng.
Exactly. And it contains 113, quote-unquote, secret teachings of Jesus, purportedly recorded by his disciple Thomas.
And we really should warn you, the listener, right out of the gate, if you are expecting those gentle, comforting Sunday school lessons of your childhood.
Oh, you are in for a massive shock. Seriously.
It is a profoundly jarring text. And what makes this deep dive so fascinating is the framing of the document itself. Because Feng doesn't present this as, a traditional archaeological discovery.
Right, there's no carbon dating happening here.
Exactly. He makes a much more radical, mystical claim right at the start. He actually asserts that his own consciousness verified these as the authentic words of Jesus.
See, I really struggle with that part. I mean, so a modern writer in 2011 just meditates, tunes into some, I don't know, cosmic frequency, and decides he knows exactly what was said 2 millennia ago.
It is a bold claim.
It sounds incredibly convenient, doesn't it?
Well, from a traditional historical perspective, yeah, it is entirely unorthodox. But within the esoteric tradition that this text belongs to, truth isn't really viewed as a historical artifact buried in the sand.
Okay, so how is it viewed then?
It's viewed as a living, eternal resonance. Feng is operating on this premise that spiritual truth is a universal frequency. So if a teaching is genuine, it will vibrate in perfect harmony with the fundamental nature of reality.
Huh. So it's less about the historical timeline and more about the philosophical physics of it?
Exactly. This is why he boldly notes that these specific teachings align perfectly with the philosophies of the Buddha and the ancient Taoist sage Laozi.
Wow.
Yeah, he is basically suggesting that once you strip away all the cultural packaging, the core mechanics of enlightenment are identical across all human history.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand those core mechanics, we have to start with the ultimate goal that this entire text revolves around, which is the kingdom of heaven.
Right, the big one.
Yeah. And in traditional mainstream narratives, we're taught to look up.
Literally up into the sky, yeah.
Exactly. The kingdom is usually described as a physical destination, like a VIP lounge in the clouds with pearly gates.
And you get to enter after you die.
Right, provided you followed all the rules, obviously. But saying number 3 in this document completely obliterates that concept.
It really does. It flips it on its head.
It does. Jesus says, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you.
I love that imagery. It's so practical.
Yeah, and then he tells them outright that the kingdom is both inside of you and outside of you. He says you must know yourself to be known.
And he reinforces that exact point later on in saying 112, the disciples actually ask him directly when the kingdom is going to come.
Like they're asking for a train schedule or something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are expecting a timeline for some apocalyptic event. But his response is essentially to just stop waiting for it.
Because it's already here.
Right. He states that the kingdom of the Father is already spread out upon the earth, but people simply cannot see it. It's a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah, I mean, that changes the whole game.
He is trying to explain that the kingdom is not a geographic location in space, nor is it a future event in time. It is an altered state of perception available right now in the present moment.
It reminds me of those old Magic Eye 3D posters from the 90s.
Oh, yeah. The ones in the mall.
Yes, you know the ones, where you stare at this page of chaotic neon static, and you are trying so hard to see, like, the hidden spaceship or the dolphin or whatever.
But everyone around you is pointing at the page saying, look, it's right there.
Exactly. But you just see a mess, because the image is already perfectly printed on the page. It's spread out right in front of you. But you cannot perceive it using your conventional way of focusing your eyes.
You have to kind of unfocus.
Right. You actually have to abandon your normal way of seeing reality for that hidden dimension to suddenly snap into place. It's like frantically tearing apart your house looking for your glasses when they're already sitting on top of your head.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize the mechanism he's describing. The kingdom is the hidden image in the static of daily life.
But getting to that point, getting your eyes to adjust.
What's fascinating here is the psychological toll of trying to see that image. Because the text does not frame this shift in perception as a peaceful, relaxing epiphany.
Yeah, not at all. It sounds rough, actually.
It is. Look at the progression outlined in saying to.
Yeah.
It gives us a chronological map of seeking the truth. He says, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all."
See, that second step is where I get hung up. He will become troubled.
Right.
Because we usually associate spiritual awakening with, a warm glow of inner peace. Why does finding the truth have to hurt?
Well, because true self-knowledge requires the absolute destruction of your ego and your worldview.
Oof, that's a lot.
Think about the mechanics of realizing your entire life. Your anxieties, your ambitions, your definition of success has been based on an illusion. Cognitive dissonance is physically and emotionally painful.
So it's like realizing you've been climbing the wrong ladder your whole life.
Precisely. If you suddenly perceive the kingdom spread upon the earth, you simultaneously realize how much time and energy you've wasted chasing phantoms. You have to dismantle the identity you have spent decades building.
Wow.
That isn't a peaceful process, it is an internal demolition job.
Which perfectly explains why the guide leading you through this demolition cannot be a passive, gentle teacher.
No, you need someone who's going to tear the walls down.
Exactly. If achieving this internal kingdom requires the painful stripping away of deeply held illusions, it requires a certain level of aggression, which plunges us into the second major theme of this deep dive.
The disruptor and the firebringer.
Yes, and I really want to challenge the text here because the language becomes incredibly intense. In saying 15, Jesus says he did not come to bring peace to the earth, but conflict.
Fire, sword, war.
Yeah, and division within households. He talks about turning father against son. I mean, by modern mental health standards, advocating for the intentional destruction of your family support system sounds incredibly toxic.
It does.
So is this text actually promoting domestic warfare and cult-like isolation? Like, is it literal?
It is entirely understandable why it reads that way, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the psychological mechanism at play here.
Okay, lay it on me.
The fire and the sword are not literal weapons. They are metaphors for the severing of societal conditioning. Human systems, families, cultures, religious institutions, they rely heavily on conformity to maintain their stability.
Right. Everyone has to agree on the rules for the game to work.
Exactly. They function based on a shared set of illusions about what is important. So when one person in that system suddenly wakes up, when they stop caring about status or wealth or orthodox rules,
They become a threat.
a profound threat to the stability of that group,
Yeah.
the friction is inevitable. The text isn't commanding you to go pick a physical fight with your parents.
At the relief.
It is warning you that when you adopt a radically independent, enlightened perspective, the sleeping world around you will automatically react with hostility.
I see. It is the inevitable conflict of someone trying to wake up a room full of people who desperately want to hit the snooze button.
That's a great way to put it. And he completely leans into that role. In saying 10, he says, "I have cast fire upon the world, and look, I'm guarding it until it blazes."
He's portraying himself as an arsonist of illusions.
Yes. And what is really fascinating is how terrified his own followers are of this fire. There is a bizarre moment in saying 13 where Jesus takes Thomas aside privately and tells him 3 secret things.
Oh, I remember this part. When Thomas returns, the other disciples are begging to know what was said.
And Thomas refuses. He tells them, "If I tell you one of the things which he told me, you will pick up stones and throw them at me. A fire will come out of the stones and burn you up."
That is wild. They'd rather stone him than hear the truth.
It is a brilliant psychological portrait of how entrenched systems resist true self-awareness. The other disciples in that moment represent the conventional orthodox mindset.
They think they want the truth?
They believe they do, but Thomas recognizes their actual capacity. He knows that if he handed them unmediated radical truth, their immediate knee-jerk reaction would be violent rejection.
They would try to stone him for heresy to protect their existing belief.
Exactly. And the profound paradox of that saying is that the very stones they used to defend their ignorance would become the catalyst for their own destruction. The text is making a clear sociological observation here.
Which is?
Institutions are inherently hostile to personal spiritual revelation.
Man, the critique of those institutions is incredibly sharp. Like, saying 101 compares the Pharisees, the religious gatekeepers and scholars of the time, to a dog in a manger.
It is such a vivid image.
It really is. Because a dog doesn't eat hay. It has no use for it. But it lies in the feeding trough, barking and snapping, preventing the cows from eating.
They are hoarding the keys to knowledge.
Right. They refuse to enter the kingdom themselves, but they violently prevent anyone else from entering. Why do they do that?
Well, we have to ask why the dog behaves that way. It comes down to power dynamics and the economics of belief. If the cows realize they can simply walk up and eat the hay.
If people realize the kingdom of heaven is already inside them.
Yes. If they realize it's accessible at any moment, the entire priest class loses its job. The gatekeepers derive all their authority, their wealth, and their social standing from maintaining the illusion of scarcity.
They have to convince you that the divine is a distant, gated community, and they are the only ones holding the tickets.
Bingo. The fire this text brings is the realization that the gate doesn't even exist, which renders the dog completely irrelevant.
Okay, but knowing that you're going to face that kind of systemic hostility, both from your own ego and from society, how do you actually survive the process?
That's the real challenge.
Yeah. How do you secure this internal kingdom? This is where the text offers a series of parables that, honestly, ditch all conventional morality in favor of ruthless, pragmatic focus.
The parables here are remarkably devoid of sentimentality.
That's an understatement.
They aren't stories about being a good neighbor or giving to the poor. They are tactical manuals for spiritual survival.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A perfect example is saying 97. It is the parable of a man who wants to assassinate a powerful figure.
A literal assassination plot.
Right. But before he even leaves his house, he draws his sword and stabs it directly into the wall of his own home. He does this to test whether his hand has enough strength to drive the blade deep enough.
It's very graphic.
I have to admit, using a premeditated murder plot as an allegory for spiritual growth is wild. It's like the ultimate extreme version of measure twice, cut once.
It is intentionally shocking to shake the reader out of complacency. Let's analyze the mechanics of this imagery. The powerful figure represents the deeply entrenched illusions of the material world.
Or maybe the core of the human ego itself.
Exactly. Taking that down is not a casual weekend hobby. The parable is about intense, calculated, private preparation. The wall represents your own internal resistance.
So stabbing the wall is about proving to yourself what you are actually capable of before the stakes are fatal.
Yes. If you are not strong enough to drive the sword into your own wall, meaning, if you do not have the discipline to conquer your own minor impulses and internal chaos in private,
then you're toast out in the real world.
You will be absolutely crushed when you face the massive forces of external societal conditioning.
How does someone practically do that, though, like stab the wall in daily life?
By denying small impulses first. Can you sit in silence for an hour without looking at your phone?
Oh man, that's a call-out.
Can you observe an insult without reacting defensively? If you cannot overcome those small internal walls, you have no chance of surviving the fire of total ego death.
Wow. That theme of hyper-calculated focus continues in saying 8, too.
Ah, the fisherman.
Yeah, a wise fisherman pulls up a massive net completely full of small fish. But buried in the middle of this huge catch is one large, magnificent fish.
And what does he do?
He doesn't try to keep everything. He doesn't hold on to the small fish just in case. He immediately, without a single second of hesitation, dumps all the small fish back into the sea and keeps only the large one.
Notice the cognitive process there. The text highlights his lack of hesitation. The fisherman instantly recognizes the singular, overwhelming value of the big fish, which represents true spiritual enlightenment.
Right.
To secure it, he effortlessly abandons all minor worldly distractions. The text is pointing out a very specific danger here. We are rarely destroyed by obvious evils. We are usually distracted to death by things that are completely benign, but simply less important.
Distracted to death. I think saying 63 is the most terrifying example of that exact danger.
The parable of the feast.
Yes. A man prepares a huge banquet and sends his servant out to invite the guests. But every single guest has a perfectly reasonable, responsible excuse.
Very relatable excuses, too.
Oh, totally. One has to go collect money from merchants. Another just bought a house and needs to go inspect the property. Another is busy organizing a friend's wedding. Another just bought a farm and has to go collect rent.
They aren't doing anything malicious.
Not at all. They're doing exactly what society tells them they should be doing. They are being productive, responsible citizens.
But look at the host's reaction. He rejects them entirely. He tells the servant to go out into the streets and invite completely random strangers instead.
Which is brutal.
And the saying concludes with a chillingly blunt statement. Buyers and merchants will not enter the places of my Father.
That is so intense.
This is arguably the most radical claim in the entire document. It is explicitly stating that the daily grind, the pursuit of commerce, the endless administrative maintenance of a quote-unquote normal life.
Even if those things seem practically essential for survival.
Exactly. It's saying those things are fatal to spiritual awakening.
I'm struggling to see how anyone can practically apply that today. I mean, are we supposed to just abandon our mortgages and let our bank accounts drain to zero?
Well, the text isn't necessarily demanding literal poverty, but it is demanding total non-attachment. It is asking you to evaluate the cognitive weight of your responsibilities. Are you defining your existence by your property inspections and your merchant debts?
Ah, I see.
If your consciousness is entirely consumed by the anxiety of an unread email or the stress of a fluctuating retirement account, you are clutching a net full of small fish.
You are missing the invitation to the ultimate feast because you are too busy managing the illusions of the material world. That forces a really uncomfortable audit of my own life. Like, what are the small fish I am obsessing over?
It's a tough question for all of us.
Because if you actually manage to do this, if you endure the cognitive dissonance, if you survive the fire, if you stab the wall and throw back the daily distractions, what are you left with?
It's a big fish.
Right. But what is the ultimate nature of this truth you've sacrificed everything for? This brings us to the final revelation of the text, where it abandons theological language almost entirely and shifts into concepts that sound shockingly scientific.
Yeah, it enters the realm of mystical physics. It attempts to explain the fundamental architecture of reality.
In saying 50, the disciples ask what the sign of the Father within them is. Jesus does not offer a moral answer like a feeling of peace or a righteous heart.
No, he says the sign is vibration and stillness.
Motion and rest. When I read that, it instantly clicked why Feng connected this to Laozi, the Buddha, but it also sounds exactly like modern quantum mechanics.
This raises an important question, right? Let's explore that connection, because it explains how ancient minds intuitively grasped the nature of omnipresence. We are deeply conditioned to view the divine anthropomorphically as a human-like entity managing the universe from afar.
Right, the guy in the sky with the beard.
Exactly, but quantum physics tells us that solid matter is an illusion. At the subatomic level, everything is mostly empty space, governed by vibrating fields of energy and moments of rest.
Vibration and stillness.
Yes. The text is framing the divine not as a person, but as the elemental fabric of reality itself. Vibration and stillness are the binary states of the physical universe. It is the pulse of existence.
Man, he expands on that beautifully in saying 77. He says, I am the light that shines over all things. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift a stone, and you will find me there.
He is entirely identifying the spiritual truth with the physical substance of the universe. The divine isn't separate from the material world, watching it from a distance. It is the material world.
It's woven into it.
It is the hidden dimension, the light woven into the atomic structure of the wood and the stone. But there is a massive caveat to this realization, which is addressed in saying 28.
Oh yes, the concept of the marvel of marvels.
Right. In saying 28, he says, if the flesh came into being because of spirit, it is a marvel. But if spirit came into being because of the body, it is a marvel of marvels.
Which sounds like a compliment, but it's really not.
No, he is expressing a profound cosmic tragedy. It is a miracle that the pure, vibrational light of the universe can manifest as a physical human body. But it is a tragedy, an ironic marvel of marvels, if a person lives their entire life believing that their luminous consciousness only exists to serve the needs of their physical flesh.
It is the ultimate inversion of reality. It would be like buying a multi-million-dollar quantum supercomputer and using it exclusively as a doorstop.
That's a perfect analogy.
You possess this profound consciousness, the exact same light that is in the split wood and the lifted stone, and you are using it entirely to worry about whether you bought the right house or what the merchants owe you or how to maintain your social status.
You are treating the flesh as the master, rather than realizing the flesh is just a temporary vessel meant to experience the light.
And that ties the entire framework together. The reason you must ruthlessly throw back the small fish, the reason you must endure the painful destruction of your old paradigms.
The reason you must realize the kingdom is already spread upon the earth.
Exactly. It's so that you can correct that inversion. It is so you can align your perception with that fundamental vibration and stillness and stop living as a slave to the hollow demands of the external world.
Spot on.
What an unbelievable journey through these basement archives. Let's briefly trace the through line of what we've uncovered today. We started by redefining heaven, moving it from a mythical destination in the sky to a hidden internal state of perception available right now.
And then we confronted the painful, disruptive fire required to burn away our illusions.
Right, and explored how deeply entrenched institutions will always fight to keep the gates locked. Then we unpacked the psychological mechanics of ruthless prioritization through those bizarre parables.
Testing our resolve against our own walls and tossing back the endless distractions of normal life.
Yes. And finally, we arrived at a cosmological vision of the universe, where the ultimate truth is the light and vibration woven into the very fabric of matter.
It is a sweeping progression. It moves from altering your psychology to dictating your daily tactics to redefining your understanding of physics, and it demands absolute active participation.
It refuses to let you be a passive observer. And that is exactly why exploring this text matters so much for you today. I mean, we live in an era defined by extreme information overload and the constant demands of the material world.
We are drowning in it.
We really are. We're in a sea of algorithms telling us what to desire and external dogmas telling us how to behave. We are permanently surrounded by merchants inviting us to meaningless feasts and gatekeepers barking from the manger to protect their authority.
It's deafening.
So this document serves as a piercing reminder to look past the static, to unfocus your eyes from the polished, accepted narratives, and to do the difficult, deeply uncomfortable work of finding the big fish through radical self-discovery.
It challenges us to stop staring at the sky, hoping for a rescue, and start examining the stillness beneath the chaotic vibration of our own minds.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering thought that zooms out from the personal to the historical.
Okay.
We have spent this time analyzing how jarring, how demanding, and how radically independent these teachings are compared to the orthodox traditions that shape the modern world. Think about the historical butterfly effect.
Oh, that's interesting.
If these specific esoteric teachings, with their focus on internal mystical physics and the complete rejection of institutional authority, if they had not been hidden away or dismissed.
Right. If this text had become the mainstream foundation of Western civilization 2,000 years ago, instead of the standardized narratives we got.
Exactly. What would our world actually look like today?
Yeah.
How would our laws, our scientific progress, and our daily societal structures be entirely different if humanity had spent the last 2 millennia looking inward for the light in the wood and the stone, rather than looking outward for a kingdom in the sky?
It's wild to think about.
It really is. Keep seeking, keep questioning. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.